Hello and welcome to ThePrint. I'm Kyra Menon, and today I am joined by Mr. Jaithirth Rao, an author, former entrepreneur, and distinguished columnist for ThePrint. Thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Rao.
Not at all. My pleasure.
So, your recent article titled Every Claim of Victory Gets Reversed in the Middle East, Stay Tuned for Iran's, challenges the idea that battlefield success in West Asia necessarily produces lasting strategic victory. And drawing on your own experience of living in the region during the 1973 Yom Kippur War, you trace this pattern through several historical turning points from Israel and Syria to Iran, and you identify how these apparent victors often overestimate the permanence of their advantage, while these defeated actors adapt and survive. So, this brings us to the first question then. Is adaptation both the source of the region's resilience and the force that allows its conflicts to endure?
I don't know if it's adaptation. I really think it's the other way around. I think it is the victors declaring victory too soon. Uh, and that seems to be a pattern in the Middle East. It's there everywhere. I mean, that temptation is there everywhere in the world. But it's a heightened pattern in the Middle East where a quick success then goes to the head of the victors. And invariably, there is not even one case where it isn't the reverse. We will talk. In fact, there is one case, maybe in the 20th century, where there was some stability. But otherwise, what usually happens is uh, the situation gets either partially or wholly reversed within a few, not years, many times in a few hours, weeks, months, sometimes years, but virtually no victory stands for a decade or two. It just doesn't work that way in the Middle East. And Yom Kippur, you mentioned, you think about it. One, and I was living in an Arab country in Lebanon. Um, the Arab press said, hey, Egypt and Anwar Sadat have won. They have crossed the Suez Canal. Israel is in mortal danger. Syria is attacking from the north. Just a few days later, they went silent. They started talking about other things. But then we had access to other um, radio and other stuff. We knew that, in fact, the Egyptian army had been surrounded by the Israelis. So now Israel was on a high, right? They had knocked out, or they were about to knock out. And then immediately America intervened and forced Israel not to knock out the Egyptian army. That was actually a few hours or days, it wasn't even weeks. So all these happened so quickly. Uh, that gives you an idea of, and some of these happen over months or over years. In recent times, forget 73, that seems so long ago. Look at Syria. It took 13 years from the start of the Syrian civil war in 2011 to the actual final departure of Assad. First, Assad looked vulnerable. Everybody said there's a repeat of Arab Spring in Syria. Assad is going. Looked very vulnerable for a year or two. And then Assad reasserted himself. And then everybody gave up saying, sorry, Syria is different. Assad is going to last forever. And they started making friends with Assad. Then suddenly, in a matter of days, Assad crumbled, and then he's gone. So it's and the same people who had been battered and attacked by the America and its allies, some Al Qaeda offshoot, they are now in power. So it just changes again and again. And of course, the most recent conflict, it's been quite interesting to see. October 7th was considered a very important date because it changes the trajectory of the region quite substantially. Israel looked really bad. First of all, the intelligence failure was monumental, and Israeli intelligence is supposed to be good. So that was something that the whole world was kind of recoiling from. On top of that, even the Israeli military outposts on the borders between Israel and Gaza and the response of the Israeli military seem to have been pretty bad, pretty slow, and not along the lines of competence usually assigned to the Israeli military. So Israel was being attacked from the west by Hamas and suddenly Hezbollah joined in from the north, and the Houthis were creating trouble on the other side. So Israel seemed in pretty difficult situations. And then within a few months, things changed. First of all, Israel took on Hamas very strongly, very uh, hard stance in Gaza. Then the pager thing happened, and Hezbollah got badly mauled. And suddenly Israel started looking better. On top of that, Israel was able to, with impunity, attack the Iranian embassy in Damascus. They were able to kill a Hamas guy in Tehran. That means intelligence, at least wise, there was a massive recovery of Israel, and Israeli intelligence was getting stronger and stronger with pager and killing of Hezbollah leaders and so on and so forth, and actually being able to compromise both Hezbollah and Iran on the intelligence front. As if this were not enough, suddenly Assad fell. So Hezbollah's great ally, Iran's great ally in that part of the world, was gone. So now Israel looked ascendant. It was all just a few months. I mean, there was no. It was quite almost funny from an external spectator's point of view, although it's very tragic and violent if you're a participant there. The next stage was Israel was really ascended. They were able to create a corridor all the way into Tehran, getting weakening um, Iran's air defenses. And they were able to get American support for at least 2 days in June of 2025 and do use some bunker buster bombs and so on. And Iran seemed to be weak. Not only was Iran weak externally, internally, a lot of agitation started in Iran. The uh, Iranian currency weakened either on its own or by deliberate U.S. intervention, which the U.S. has claimed actually. And then this time the protests were not usual feminists objecting to hijab or whatever. This time it was merchants and the general solid bourgeoisie of Iran, if you will, that was protesting. So it looked bad internally also for Iran. And then that reversed. First of all, there were enough news reports that, in fact, the protests and agitations were being organized by Israel and America. So that kind of sheen of legitimacy went away from the protests. And the Iranian regime, Iranian government, cracked down on the protests and they came back to be quite strong. Now, if you look at the February 28th war, again on day one, these guys looked very good, Israel and the US. They had gotten rid not only of the supreme leader, but also of several other leaders. So a repeat of Syria seemed almost on the cards. Again, the reversal took place within a matter of days. Within a matter of days, the Iranian government re-established strong presence. In fact, it united a lot of Iranians. And as the war proceeded over the next few weeks, Iran emerged as if not a victorious party, at least as an undefeated party. And they, instead of nuclear weapons, they had a better weapon with the Hormuz Strait. So suddenly, again, roles have reversed. Now, when we are talking about role reversals, right now it looks as if Iran is on a bit of a high. Correct? What I'm arguing is just wait. If I were advising the Iranians, I would advise them not to get too cocky because this is West Asia. This is the Middle East, and things change. And there's some tactically that things can change. One tactically is that by using alternate routes, the Hormuz Strait may become less important. You know, uh, direct through to the Mediterranean, through to the Red Sea, through to the Oman Sea. Uh, Different Gulf countries can route their oil. That may take anywhere between 6 to 12 months, maybe a little longer. The second thing that I'm really saying is what has come out of this is that oil is no longer only about price and availability, it's also become a strategic security issue for many people. So diversification happens. I think new oil, Venezuela, Guyana, Mozambique, Russia, Azerbaijan, their oil production may go up substantially, which means the whole importance of the Gulf comes down. What is even more intriguing on a strategic, that's tactical, strategic level is that total demand for oil may start going down pretty fast and pretty quickly. The Chinese uh, manufacture of electric vehicles and solar cells um, at such low prices means that the whole world can shift its energy consumption away from oil. I mean, there's aviation fuel and so on, they still haven't found substitutes. But certainly, the old internal combustion engine driven automobile may be on its way out, and therefore tractors, trucks, buses, and so on. And electricity, everybody's talking about small nuclear power plants. One is talking a great deal more about solar. So, again, and even on plastics and so on, people are saying let's go back to using coal to make it. So, strategically, over a 2 3 year period, the entire importance of the Gulf and the Gulf oil may become of oil itself, and therefore of the Gulf, and therefore of the Strait of Hormuz, may become unimportant, and Iran has to watch out. What I'm saying is, because they're on a high right now, don't let's not again, because analysts around the world tend to give very quick decisions. Now, this is it. We've done it. And we shouldn't, because it's the Middle East. Go back and think of Yom Kippur, think of the Syrian civil war, and see how things go on a yo yo. Now, the interesting question you, I think, raised, has there been any time when anything in the Middle East or West Asia has lasted a long time? I think very few things have really lasted a long time. You would think even the British conquest of parts of the Ottoman Empire, you know, in terms, it lasted about 30 years. Um, its impact in that part of the world. 30 years is, by today's standards of West Asia, a pretty long time. But I think the state of Israel, 1948, it was able to defeat 6 or 7 Arab countries at the same time. That has lasted. But 67, 73 wars, one is not so clear if those, and certainly the Lebanon campaigns of Israel, where they go in and then they come back, they have not um, had much impacts where the early victory, declaration of victory, and feeling good has worked out. So, and same thing, I mean, the Iran Iraq war was what, an 8 year war, long war. Nothing came out of it. Neither side gained territory nor anything, only lots of people died. And it just went back to status quo ante. So you can see that early Saddam Hussein's Kuwait, he did occupy Kuwait. He actually did. He conquered Kuwait, and then that got reversed. So It's a it's a difficult place to make predictions. The only prediction you make is that this is not going to last too long. Something's going to change it. We don't know. We can't predict exactly how or when the change will come, but it will come.
Mr. Rao, you identify Iran as the latest example of this victory and reversal pattern. So the United States and Israel appeared to assume that eliminating Iran's senior leadership would have caused the regime to unravel, but instead the Iranian state has survived and its authority has become more decentralized. So what did Washington and Tel Aviv misunderstand about the Iranian state when it made this assumption that leadership decapitation would produce regime collapse?
I think this is a larger pattern of Western, not so much Israeli, but about Western interference in different parts of the world. Color revolutions in many countries, um, and encouraging and even support for the Arab Spring, uh, where uh, direct and indirect support, and sometimes actually some of the color revolutions were not internal at all. They were actually organized by the West, by Western intelligence, that they can make serious regime changes. And they did have a lot of success in the Balkans and so on. So there's this view that we, the West, can manipulate and maneuver countries to get governments that are more aligned with us and away from governments that we don't like. Now, Syria was the latest example. Now, they've had a fair amount of success in the 90s and in the first 15 years of this century, even 2014 in Ukraine. Uh, so there is this view that this pattern will always succeed. And as we know, nothing is true always. There's always an exception to every rule. Suddenly you bump across something where it doesn't work. Um, if you had asked an analyst 12 months ago, "Yeah, of course, the West is going to ensure regime change in Iran. That's a done deal. Don't worry, because we've done it successfully here, there, and the other place." It didn't work. Sometimes it doesn't work. And what was it that they underestimated? I don't know. I don't know. Did they underestimate um, the nature of the Iranian civilization, Iranian nationalism? Did they underestimate the fact that Iran has been preparing for this? So they have gone consciously for a decentralization strategy, that they have, in fact, anticipated that many of their leaders would be killed, and therefore, how will they manage? Was it because you gave them notice over many years that they, in game theory terms, they prepared a response because you gave them notice of what you were going to do? Or is it simply not that possible? I mean, the other countries were small with relatively small populations, even Ukraine, small population. This has 90, 100 million people, and it's a big country, and its regime change is not that simple. It's not just one capital city and one palace you take over and one TV station and it's done. That doesn't work like that in Iran, obviously. Um, and probably they didn't have enough internal, although they had very successful intelligence. I mean, they knew where Iranian nuclear scientists were, where Iranian leaders were, and they were able to kill them. But they didn't have enough internal other supporting stuff to pull off a regime change. I think that was the mistake. The mistake was the assumption that we've done it successfully in so many countries, so many times, 30 years. Why won't this work? Number one. Number two, because we've generally had very great success on intelligence front. We're able to go and kill people in specific, even in safe houses. They killed that Hamas guy in a safe house of the Iranian government and intelligence in Iran. So we should be able to pull this off. They couldn't. Um, and By then, they were overcommitted. By then, they had actually attacked and killed the supreme leader and killed many leaders. So they couldn't just pull back and say, oh, this was just a failed coup attempt. They were in the war and they were bombing. And I think that that got the Iranian government galvanized, and they were able to appeal to the innate nationalism and patriotism of their people and put it together. This was, in politics, in international affairs, not everything works out. Sometimes things don't work out. If you think about Hitler in May of 1940, when he had conquered Denmark, Norway, the Low Countries, France. He looked as if everything he had done. Of course, Austria, Czechoslovakia were already, and Poland were already under his control. Like he was a master of everything, and he had a good treaty with Stalin on the other side. Well, then some things happened. He attacked Russia, and that was the beginning of his end. So sometimes you think just because you've worked everything well in the past, the next step will work. And I think Venezuela was really tragic because it seemed to work out so easily, so painlessly, and with so little uh, cost to the US that they thought the same thing could be done in Iran. It didn't work. And we have to be humbler when we look. And I think we are not participants anyway. We're just observers and spectators. I think the lessons we need to take away is to watch how even the greatest of powers can sometimes make a misstep. Even though they have a book, huh? They have successfully done it so many times, but that doesn't mean it will work the next time.
Continuing in the vein of the US's role in the region, for decades now, the United States has presented itself simultaneously as Israel's closest ally, the region's dominant external military power, and as an indispensable mediator. How has Washington's extensive military and diplomatic support for Israel affected its credibility as the broker of a wider regional settlement? And to what extent would you say that the US itself has become a participant in the cycle of victory and reversal?
I don't know. This is a very complicated question you're asking and goes a little bit. Uh, let's take a look at the US role quite simply. US role going back to 1944-45 has been to guarantee Saudi Arabia's external security in return for a very solid alliance, which also benefits the US and Saudi Arabia financially. That's one. This predates even the creation of Israel. There was modest support for Israel in 48. In fact, in 1956, Eisenhower opposed the Israeli, French, and British intervention in Suez. So it was not as if American support was taken for granted. I think as the Middle East became an area where Soviet Union and the US were competing, and Soviets seemed to have some kind of preferred position in countries like Egypt and Syria, Israel became important for America. Israel, everybody talks about this, that, and the other, but ultimately there's also cold strategic interests that count. Israel became important. If Egypt and Syria were going to be Soviet satellites, then it was essential for America to support Israel. As Israel was kind of victorious repeatedly in 67 and 73, Israel also became a bit of a partner on intelligence and on technology with the US. It was no longer just a one way street of the US helping Israel, but Israel was able to contribute in the intelligence area and in the technology area to for the military partnership between the US and Israel. So that's where Israel stands as of today. The rest of the Gulf, as Britain withdrew, this 1944-45 is Saudi Arabia, right? Only 1950s, late 50s, 60s, Britain withdrew from the Gulf. Then America stepped in Britain's place right across all the Gulf countries, including Iran. including Iran. Iran was a key ally of America till 1979. So that entire area, America dominated. It became a kind of American security lake. The Gulf, whether you call it the Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf or just the Gulf, became an American security lake. After 79, things changed because the American protege, the Shah, was overthrown. And a new government in Iran was less well disposed towards America. Because, again, it had nothing to do with external or strategic reasons. They could very well have been an American partner. It was more domestic. Because America was seen as a partner of the Shah, and because a new revolutionary government was opposed to the Shah, they couldn't be pro American or even neutral. So, since 79, that side, the eastern side of the Gulf, has been a headache for America. But the western side has been solidly under America. And the northern side, where Iraq, Saddam Hussein did create some trouble, he was effectively neutralized um, at great cost to America and to many others, and to the Iraqis themselves. But it was done. So essentially, America retained a dominant position there. The question now, I think, where you're leading up to is what may have gone wrong, what wrong calculations did America make, and will things change? I think it's too early to say. Never underestimate American resilience and long term ability to do stuff, is my view. The man who did underestimate was Bashar al Assad in Damascus. He thought he had won the Syrian civil war. And then out of the blue came out somebody who just toppled him in a matter of time. And the effect of it was done so easily because economically Assad was strangled. He couldn't even pay his soldiers. So when you don't pay your soldiers don't fight for you. So they all just surrendered, and this new group came in. So don't underestimate what the Americans will finally do vis-a-vis the Gulf. Except this earlier point I made, oil and the Gulf may become less important. If that happens, yes, America may quite easily withdraw, because if whatever you look at the way, I mean, both the Saudis and the Emiratis, they are trying to pump out as much oil as possible and cut price. Why are they doing that? They're doing that because they are worried that total demand for oil in 5 years may stop, may just take a big hit. And with these other guys, Venezuela, Guyana, and Brazil, and others, pumping enough oil, uh, it just may not matter. Price may go back to 10, 12, $15 a barrel. So let's get it out and let's get the money and invest it elsewhere. That seems to be their thinking, and they're quite clever. They're quite intelligent people. They're thinking this through. So if that happens, yeah, America may say to hell with this. We are not interested because oil is no longer. That's a strategic 5-10 year thing. That frankly, it's almost inevitable. It's almost inevitable between nuclear, between solar, uh, and the electric internal combustion engine being substituted by electric engines in motor transportation. I just think oil's glory days are over. Coal had its glory days in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Then oil took over. So oil's glory days may be over. If oil's glory days are over, then the Gulf, that whole area, its importance declines. Then America may say, yeah, that's fine. It's one part of the world we were interested in. We used to constantly do coups and wars and alliances and bases. Now we are not. That's possible.
Mr. Rao, thank you so much for joining us at The Print today and for sharing your very interesting insights on how in West Asia today's victory can become tomorrow's reversal. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Kyra. Remember, there's only one message to take for all of us around the world. Don't declare victory too soon. Don't get too cocky too soon. Things change. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.